Welcome back to the BitGeek podcast. I'm your host, Ron Avis, and sitting with me on the couch to my left is my co-host, as always, the Prince of Pixels,
Nick Wright.
And today we're going to be talking about things we miss about the 80s. So Nick, here we are once again. We're doing a list. But this time we're going to be talking about a decade of things that we loved.
A decade near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, near and dear to our hearts. I was born in 76, and you were in 77. So we are kids of the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Grew up in the 80s.
Late 80s, we were early teenagers. But, when I think about things growing up, the formative years, I think about the 80s. So, yeah, these are things that we just remember really fondly. Mm-hmm. And some of the things on our list, you literally cannot even get anymore. They're just gone. Some of the things on the list are still around.
Yeah, some things may have evolved.
Yes, good word. Some things have evolved and probably are better. Yeah. But it's the memory. We have a fond memory of things the way they were back in the 80s. And, arguably you could say they were better. But yeah, we're just going to do a top 10 list. And without further ado, we'll just get you to start off.
Well, for me, you can't even have an 80s, like my favorite anything of the 80s without saying arcades.
Oh, yeah.
That is like the number one 80s memory for me, is just the arcade atmosphere.
Pumping those quarters.
Yeah, Aladdin's Castle. Mm-hmm. It really just any arcade, but Aladdin's Castle was a huge one.
Yeah, Aladdin's Castle was our arcade. There were a couple of them in town. And yeah, I remember those details of Aladdin's Castle, like the neon, like the darkened lighting.
Yeah.
Like the floor had like this crappy confetti pattern on it.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? Just the sights and the sounds.
Yeah,
Surprise.
like the ambiance of like just that background noise of just hearing all the different arcade, each one in there doing the attract mode, and just all the beeps and
Pac-Man going off, it's just I can picture it in my head. If you want an idea of like a great, like if you've forgotten what the arcades were like in the 80s, I was rewatching a movie that wasn't great, but it was okay for this, Pixels.
Yeah.
There was that great like opening montage where, like young Adam Sandler is going to the arcade, and it had that, the way they recreated arcades from that film was dead on.
Yeah.
I loved the movie for that.
And also, like, I recently saw the trailer for the new season of Stranger Things 2.
Oh my gosh.
And, it starts out, they're playing Dragon's Lair in an arcade, and it was, just that alone was just had me so excited.
Good call on Stranger Things, because that is obviously set in the 80s.
Yeah.
And did you watch season 1?
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, man, I'm looking forward to season 2.
Yes.
Because I even saw a shot where they're like Ghostbusters in it.
Yeah.
Too. Like, they're dressed in little like packs. Like, oh my God, I can't
excited.
wait for this. But arcades, you're right. I mean, you can't have a list of things I miss about the 80s and not bring up arcades, because as I said before, they're gone. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that we miss because they're gone.
I mean, I guess there are some still around here and there, and a lot of places now are trying to bring that back. I mean, like there's that that local bar in town, Rec Bar, in Zanzibar.
Zanzibar,
they have it. They're not like a full blown arcade, but they've got a few games and everything.
Yeah, they're trying to preserve. I think that they're doing their best to preserve the memory of arcades and pay tribute to it, and obviously attract 30s and 40s somethings to their bars.
So there are those that are trying to bring that back, bring that nostalgia back, but
and I get a little happy
as a whole, though. Yeah, they're gone.
I get a little excited too when I go into a Dave and Buster's, and you when you first step into the area where the arcade's, like, it's got the noises playing and the lights are flashing, and I feel a little bit of that, but nothing beats like the 80s arcades.
Yeah.
just all the classic games, like, Pac-Man and Cubert and Donkey Kong and just you name it. The list goes on and on and on.
Just endless.
All the way through the 80s into the later 80s with like the games like Konami, like we just recently did like the TMNT playthrough and the Simpsons Arcade. Those are even the 80s.
Yeah, it was around like 88, 89 or something, I think.
Yeah, and arcade fighting games didn't really hit their heyday until the 90s.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2, I want to say that was like 91 maybe.
I think it was 91.
So, yeah, everything was a fighting game in the 90s.
But you at least had home consoles trying to port and mimic, those games and doing a decent job at times. But in the 80s, if you wanted to play those games, you weren't getting that experience with Atari 2600.
No.
Not even close. And I miss, too, like, the social aspect of arcades.
Yeah, we would always see the same people in there.
Yeah, there was, like, this one long-haired guy, I remember seeing quite a bit. And everyone was respectful.
When... I guess I'm getting more into the 90s now because the competitive games were the fighting games.
Sure.
And so that's when you're kind of socializing with others more. You always got that good game. And you don't get that online.
Not really. I mean, yeah, if you got like a cultivated list of friends, you can definitely get that. But your randoms that you'd never met before, man, you're not going to get any respect from these people. They're almost always douchebags.
Something about being face to face makes people polite.
Yeah, it does, because you're 100% more likely to take a punch to the face if like you're an ass. You never know. Like you got to be kind of polite. But arcades is just so quintessentially 80s.
And those birthday parties at Aladdin's Castle.
Yeah. Oh well, there's like a theme I think you're gonna notice probably too with some of these things we're mentioning too. But like birthday parties. You get those I think those lanyards like you'd mentioned in a previous episode, where you get like the tokens filled up.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that was like a very birthday party kind of thing.
Yeah. For many years, Eric had birthday parties at Aladdin's Castle. That was so much fun.
Oh really? I don't know if I actually ever had a birthday party at Aladdin's Castle. I knew they had them. I always imagined how cool it would be to be like an operator at one of those places. Yeah. And by the time we were really old enough to be, to apply for a job and get to be one of those guys at arcades that thinned out and died.
I feel like I applied at one point, but one of the requirements is having to be able to move one of those things around, and I was just like a little skinny kid.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but I don't think I ever got a call.
Well, it's not like you had to Hulk it, like you had dollies.
Yeah, you were
pretty, you were wiry, but you were strong. I would,
I think I was like 16 when I applied, and I don't know.
Maybe by the looks of you, they're like, I don't know if you've got what it takes. You don't have nearly the beer gut and neck beard to qualify for this position. Because they were always like older guys, like the comic book store guys.
And I mean, it may have just been one of those things where they just weren't hiring then. And
yeah, that was my thought. The turnover rather was probably not that bad.
Yeah, because
who wants to give up that job?
Probably there's two guys that work at one of them tops. You know?
Yeah, a morning guy and an afternoon guy, and it literally was just. You had first dibs on arcades. Every now and then you'd see them out there playing, but not too often. Yeah. I know I would be tempted to be out there all the time. Kids like, hey man, my quarter got stuck. I'm like, beat it. I'm trying to play. I'm working here not because I like working here. I want to work here because I get free games. But yeah, to have one of those keys and put that key in and give yourself some credits. Oh man, how sweet of a position that would be. Yeah, good memories, dude. I love arcades, and 80s arcades is the best. And speaking of 80s arcades and birthday parties, that just sort of leads right into my number one, which was Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese was
still around now, but not the same at all.
Yeah, and I can't even say it's evolved. It's like they took the name and they're banking on people like our age to bring their kids. Because I've been to a Chuck E. Cheese recently, and it's, that's nothing really special. Yeah. They still got the same kind of pizza. They still have a guy walking around in a mouse costume. But when I think of Chuck E. Cheese...
They don't have the games anymore. What do you do there? You got a ball pit?
No, they have the games.
Oh, they got games?
Yeah, they got like a bunch of those Flappy Bird type games. Oh. And they have some older movie license games. Like they had like Transformers, the Fallen game, and a whole bunch of racing games.
Everything's like a big screen game.
Everything's a big screen game. And games designed to give you tickets.
Everything is a gimmick game.
There's like skee ball, which was a very Chuck E. Cheese thing.
Oh yeah, skee ball. Yeah.
But when I think of Chuck E. Cheese, I remember the animatronics.
Yes.
And they were the best. It was like Disney World for me.
They were like kind of scary, but kind of like enticing at the same time. I don't know.
Speaking of scary, that when you first walked in, there was a lion who was supposed to be dressed like Elvis.
Yeah.
Scared me to death. I wouldn't go near him. And I would remember, walking past and kind of scooting by it real quick. And I'd peek my head in, and there'd be a couple kids like right at the stage, like, yay, lion. And I'm like, oh my God, those kids are going to get eaten. What are you doing? He's so close. And, but obviously I knew it wasn't a real lion because I got those like lifeless eyes and they were like doing their thing. But the shows were so awesome. And, obviously, as a kid, you're there for the arcades. I want to say, even more so than Aladdin's Castle, like, they had, like, rows and rows of the best games. And I remember, like, one side had, like, nothing but skee ball, and then one side had, like, nothing but, like, the latest arcades. Yeah. And then there was that, like, area where you, like, you get your tickets, and you could get your prize, 150 tickets for, like, a pencil eraser or something, And then you had like the ball pit, which was amazing. I always loved the ball pit.
I don't think I ever went in the ball pit.
Well, here's the thing about the ball pit. We had two, right? We had the one out, and this is so local, like a lot of people are going to be... But there was like the Chuck E. Cheese that was like a standalone store, and that's the one we probably remember the most. Mm-hmm. And then there was a Chuck E. Cheese in a mall.
Yeah.
And that one had a ball pit, and it was smaller, ironically, but it had a ball pit. The other one didn't, if I remember correctly.
Oh. Maybe that's why, because I usually went to the standalone one.
There was like a ballroom where the parties usually were, and that's where you had like the big stage where there was like a band, and you had like...
And you could crawl like underneath them,
yeah,
too.
Yeah. You could crawl right underneath them, which too was scary to me. But there was
like you'd like look up at them like...
Yeah.
And crawl underneath.
But yeah, they each had, they had their own little routine, and there was like...
There's like a purple guy and
I want to
the chef guy.
There was like an Italian guy. I remember.
That's the chef guy.
Was that the chef guy?
Yeah, he is Italian. There's like some like lady. I think she might have been a chicken. Like
the two lady. Guys that like are always cracking jokes in the Muppets, the two old guys.
Yeah.
They had like a version of them, I feel like, where they were maybe vultures or something.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but they had like a little balcony that they were set on. But it was the whole ballroom was just filled with these animatronics, and they put on a show.
Yeah, it was so cool.
It was awesome, and it just was overwhelming as a little kid because I just remember like running wild. Because you're there usually for a birthday party. So you're like, yeah, okay, happy birthday to you. And you get your crappy pizza and your piece of cake, and you watch the kids tear open their presents. You're like, nah. But you really just want to get in there and play games and get under those, find a ball pit, I guess, if you had one. I just remember losing my mind at Chuck E. Cheese, just having the greatest experiences there. Did you ever have a birthday party there, or did you just remember going there?
I went to a birthday party, but I personally didn't have a birthday party there.
Yeah, I don't think I ever personally had a birthday party there either, but several kids I knew had birthday parties there. But, Chuck E. Cheese... way popular in the 80s, kind of went out in the 90s. As I remember even when they redesigned him to have kind of a 90s hip look. And Chuck E. Cheese is wearing like inline skates and, like neon colors. And just like by that time, I think that standalone store had closed.
I know, like for us, Chuck E. Cheese was like around the first or second week of summer vacation, like every year. And, and you'd bring in your report card. And you get like 30 or something tokens, like for like all A's or I forget what.
Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese is just one of those. It's one of those 2 or 3 places that are just like I close my eyes and I picture childhood and like Chuck E. Cheese comes to mind.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, that's my number 1. What's your number 2?
Number 2, Transformers is so 80s to me.
Oh,
and that's something that, Transformers obviously exist now.
Mm-hmm.
But 80s Transformers, I miss 80s Transformers.
G1 Transformers.
Specifically, yeah, the G1 Transformers. That's something very nostalgic for me.
Me too. I remember they came on Sundays or whatever, and I missed quite a bit of the episodes in the initial run, but when I was able to catch an episode of Transformers, it was like the best of childhood. And I have just so many fond memories of Transformers in general.
Yeah, and I really don't know what more we can say about Transformers that we haven't already,
Yeah. Did you ever have one of those like twin bed tents that would go over the top of your bed, and it was like a tent with flaps, and they made them for lots of different toy lines and for girls and boys. But I had a Transformers one of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And I remember too, it was that like art style that had, they were like in space, on the boxes. Mm-hmm. I guess it was like the second run, because the first one was just all like the grids. And then I want to say like this, maybe around the second. Well, I guess they were always grids, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were always grids, but I remember like art style very specifically of like Grimlock, and it was around 85.
Grimlock's year 2.
Yeah, Grimlock's year 2. But that to me was very 80s, like sleeping bags and tents like that were so 80s. Yeah. In fact, Transformers is having a renaissance now on the strength of just re-releasing new versions of the G1 toys.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing a lot of that now.
Yeah, with the Combiner Wars.
They're more articulated, more joints and everything now.
Right, it's like you got it. They do a good job kind of capturing the cartoon look of them, but and they're more articulated. Like I say, way harder to Transformer because of that. When you mentioned Transformers, I'm reminded of another very 80s thing that you don't see anymore that I miss, and that's like your toy line to cartoon, tie-ins that you would always get. Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite cartoon toy memories are like G.I. Joe, Transformers,
Mask,
He-Man, whatever. Yeah. I mean, that was essentially the reason for the cartoon, was to sell the toys, and they had to stop doing that at some point. But that to me is like an 80s thing that I would probably mention on my list if I, if you weren't going to mention Transformers, then I would probably bring that up.
Yeah, so we'll just, like we usually do,
all-encompassing toy lines and cartoons. But Transformers, of my top 5 favorite things ever, I would probably say, like my family. Wait, no, Transformers. No, I'm just kidding. Like, it's just one of those things that defines me as a person. Yeah, is Transformers. I made a lot of friends.
They were so cool. Like, they had like the actual rubber tires back then. It's all plastic now, and die-cast metal in a lot of the parts for some of them, like Optimus Prime was.
Little missiles that shot.
Yeah.
I remember like the little stickers that you would kind of rub, and it would become like, is it a Decepticon or is it an Autobot?
That was kind of a gimmick at the time.
It was a gimmick, but I mean, there were a lot of those gimmicks. There was the gimmick where
it was cool. Yeah, the little heat stickers.
That was fun. And then you also, I don't know, like, it was really kind of pointless, but remember how you used to have on the back of the boxes the stats?
Tech specs.
You get the tech specs, and you'd have that like red rectangular shaped bar that I guess like decoded there, but you could see the line.
You could see it, but it was neat,
Yeah, and then that was another little gimmick that they did. I remember they would include those like little like rubber versions of previous generations Transformers.
Decoys.
The decoys, those were fun.
Those were cool.
I really remember like being interested in getting some. Even if I'd had that Transformer already, I'd be like, well, I want that little Ravage.
Man, but I want the little decoy.
Yeah, gosh, I guess I'll get it again because I really want that. And that's saying something, because when you're smaller, you don't really have a lot of disposable income to do that. But it was a neat thing. It was kind of like those. Remember those like little wrestling figure muscle? Yeah, they reminded me of the Muscle.
Yeah,
that's a good number too. Is there anything else to say about Transformers? And like you said, I mean, we've done movie reviews, and
I'm sure we'll talk about Transformers again at some
I'm
point.
sure we will. All right, so that leaves my number 2.
Yep.
And since we're talking about toys, I'm going to say my number 2 is like the catalogs that you used to get around Christmas time.
Oh, like Sears and
yes.
JCPenney?
Sears and JCPenney catalogs. Yeah. I have so many great memories of just like getting that book and rushing home and like laying it down on the ground and plopping in front of it and just looking at every single toy that really is known to man. Mm-hmm. And it was, the books were thick. They were like, this thick overall, and you'd flip, close, whatever. Tools, bam, toys.
Yeah. Flip. Yeah. Straight to the, where's the toy /
rip every other page
section
out just so I get to those toys. And I love looking through those because, they have usually like this really kind of, nicely laid out display on a rock or something, of all the Transformers, and they'd have like the little numbers by them, and then you'd take that and you'd go down and you'd have the listing of the price. And even though you could get most of these toys at any time, almost really, it was just seeing them all together like that was so cool and exciting. Nowadays, you could just do like an Amazon search, put in toys, and you look through all the toys, and then it's like recommended, and you're like, oh yes, I would like to look at, whatever other kind of toy line. And you fall down the rabbit hole in that way. So yeah, it's evolved, as you'd said earlier, but nothing beats for me like the memories of those catalogs. And I kept them for a long time too. Yeah. It'd be like 87, and I would have like still the 84, 85, 86 catalog. Because it was fun to just pull out those books and like...
And you I don't know if... you were like me. I would just stare at the same things like over and over, like next day, just flip through it and look at it again and just stare at it,
No, man, you weren't alone. Because that was like our internet version of, we are so spoiled nowadays. I try to like, pull back though, like in my day, and like get off my lawn kind of things, because we all benefit from the internet. But kids nowadays, I can't help but say that statement, like kids nowadays, they just don't have any idea.
It's hard to appreciate because everything is just within your grasp now, and
everything's instantaneous and perfect and just the way you want it. And you just, the simple joy that you could extract out of like 10 or 12 pages of a, catalog of everything that defined you and was important to you in that year was right there. And, you could take it to your parents and go, look, this is what I was talking about. Oh, look, here's what I would like to have. Mm-hmm. And you really couldn't do that any other way. Unless you were in a store and you could drag your parents over to the toy section, which they probably expertly avoided most of the time. Like, then, you could take that page, boom, that's what I want, Mom or Dad. Mm-hmm. So the Sears and catalogs, JCPenney catalogs, or your service merchandise catalogs, whatever stores, if they still do them, I doubt they do. I'd like to know. Yeah, I would like to know if they still do those catalogs.
Seems like I heard somewhere that like JCPenney's or whoever the last one was quit doing it.
Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, but they would always have that like picture of like Santa like shushing, like on the front of the page. But when I think 80's again, and especially talking about Transformers and toys, just those catalogs. And just being everything that you could ever want, you could possibly want as a kid, is right there at your fingertips. Number 3 for you, Nick?
Well, so, you were talking about cartoons earlier. Number 3 for me, so 80's that I miss. Well, that is so nostalgia that I really enjoyed as a kid. Watching the USA Cartoon Express.
Oh, man, I forgot about the USA Cartoon Express.
It had all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yeah. I remember vaguely like there was a train. Yeah. I guess it was the Cartoon Express.
Yeah.
And all the cartoon characters are like riding the train. Yes, they would get on the train and like kind of make their way to the seats. We'd already had an episode of Saturday morning cartoons where you had your, network shows. But there was USA Network was, one of the few major flagship cable stations at the time. And they had a block of cartoons in the afternoons. I guess they were like weekday afternoons.
I really don't remember what time it was. But whatever time it was, I was there,
Yeah, I remember watching USA because, I would get home from school and I would watch, whatever last couple of old game show reruns they would show.
Yeah.
Whether it be, Press Your Luck or something. And then it would go into the Cartoon Express. And, it was a lot of Hanna-Barbera shows. But that's not all.
I'm sure there were other ones, but it seemed the majority was Hanna-Barbera.
Well, I remember watching some syndicated cartoons as well. Like Cops was a big one that I remember catching mostly on USA. Which
Seems
was
like I read that Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters, was on there at one point, but I don't really remember watching them on there.
Mask, I would catch episodes of Mask on USA. But it seems to me and Dragon's Lair I think was at some point on there.
Maybe.
And so they must have had shows early in the morning too, because I remember wanting to see in a TV guide, I'd get a new TV guide or something, which is also very antiquated. You don't see TV guides anymore because everything's just it's your menu on your TV. You can just do searches. Everything's on demand. But I would get a TV guide and I would start looking through and trying to find what I would like to watch for that next week. And I remember just getting lucky and seeing a listing for Dragon's Lair, but it was 5:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah, I think they had Pac-Man, occasionally. And
yeah, so they would have any kind of cartoon, but yeah, Hanna-Barbera was the meat and potatoes.
I guess Pac-Man was Hanna-Barbera though too.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you remember your Huckleberry Hound and your Yogi Bear and your
Quickie Koala.
Oh yeah, you remember all those shows, but then also shows like Smurfs and Pac-Man, and those are also Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cartoon Express is a great 80s nostalgia thing for me. It reminds me of the Disney cartoons that would come on also in the afternoons.
Oh yeah.
Like DuckTales and then Rescue Rangers.
Disney Afternoon
was a total thing. And it kind of built up steam. Like it started out obviously just as DuckTales. And then DuckTales was a huge success.
And so then they had Rescue Rangers, Tailspin.
Yep. And then they would come on back to back to back to back. And once they got to Darkwing Duck, they'd probably retire DuckTales. And then they would move Rescue Rangers up.
I guess Darkwing Duck, maybe that was closer to 90s. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Darkwing, well, it for sure was. Even Tailspin was the early 90s.
Yeah. Because
DuckTales was 87 and 88. Rescue Rangers was actually 89 and probably 90.
Okay, yeah.
And then, Tailspin was probably 90, 91. And, they would go for a couple seasons. I think DuckTales lasted a little bit longer, maybe 3 seasons.
Is that all?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think it went a long time. Because, by the time they got to season 3, season 4, they were doing Gizmo Duck and the little cave boy and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. What was his name?
Can't remember.
You know that... actually, he just died recently, didn't he? Wilbur on Mr. Ed was Scrooge. Alan
really?
Young.
Oh, yeah.
He just died recently.
He did die in 2016 because I remember when they got the new DuckTales show on Disney XD now. Have you seen it yet?
No. Is it started?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's great. I love it.
Good, yeah.
It looks good. But the voice for Scrooge is so different than that character.
Yeah. Is it
It's fine.
different? It's fine different.
It's
just
fine.
Different.
It's just you got to get over it's not Scrooge.
Yeah.
The voice of Scrooge McDuck was the same for years. And, that character, that actor, like you say. And I wonder if he was maybe part of, maybe being part of that show. Because that show was in development for a couple years before it came out.
He had done Scrooge even before DuckTales.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He
remember
time.
remember the Christmas special that they had? He was Scrooge
Mickey's
then.
Christmas Carol.
Mickey's Christmas Carol, yeah. He was Scrooge then. For a long time too. One thing too you got to get used to about DuckTales, the new one, is the kids are very they don't talk like Donald. Donald will kind of talk, and the kids had a little kiddier version of the way Donald talked.
Oh yeah.
nobody talks like that anymore. Like everybody has like a regular voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's another thing. You're kind of jarring, but it feels very much like DuckTales.
Is Donald in it?
Donald's in it.
Does he talk like Donald?
Yes. Yeah. The same guy who's been Donald for like the last couple decades.
Okay.
Is the voice of Donald.
There'd be riots in the streets, I think.
No, you can't mess with Donald Duck. I mean, Donald Duck's been that since he came out.
Yeah.
He's always had that speech impediment thing or whatever.
I know I've read that they've kind of separated the nephews. Like they've each got their own unique personalities now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they even have a slightly different style in their clothing too. If I'm not mistaken.
I noticed that on a picture I've seen that. Yeah, they're
cool.
not just like palette swaps of each other.
No,
anymore.
right? They're not palette swaps anymore. They have little bits of differences. Yeah. And Webby's still in it, and Mrs. Beakley, who's like Webby's granddaughter, I guess. But Mrs. Beakley has a different kind of thing going on. She's very kind of buttoned up now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But remember, what was like Scrooge's rival, Glomgold or whatever?
Yeah.
He's back.
Yeah.
Launchpad feels like Launchpad. They haven't changed him much. His voice is a little different, but not too much. But, well, we're really getting off track here. DuckTales, the new season of DuckTales I like it. Yeah. They had an hour show, like, premiered in August this month. And then now there's nothing again until like I think the actual series is in September.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, check out DuckTales, man. It's quite good. Yeah, I love the art style, and they're treating it with lots of respect.
Yeah.
The theme song's exactly the same too.
They the style, they've got like the pie cut eyes, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, I dig that style.
Yes,
I approve.
I really like the way Disney Animation's going with their styles. Like I even really like that Rapunzel series too. The way they do it, it looks really okay. I have small kids, so like I'm watching these shows all the time. I have an excuse to do these things. I'd still watch them. But yeah, our Disney Afternoon, USA Cartoon Express, totally 80s, and I miss that. Mm-hmm. And you know, again, they're still cartoons. There's no lack of cartoons out anymore, but you know that afternoon, binging on those cartoons in the afternoon, just like how you would binge on Saturday morning cartoons, was very 80s.
Yeah. So
that's a good pick, man.
All right.
Next for me, number 3. Okay, I'm getting a little more nuanced now, I guess. Toys R Us, the old school layout.
Oh yeah, they've completely changed.
Yeah, they're one of those like companies that are constantly trying to change with the times.
Yeah.
And they've had, you know, some financial problems, and they're doing everything they can to stay relevant. So I understand why they made changes.
Yeah. But
I really miss the way like Toys R Us used to be.
It used to be like
out.
A maze, like when you first went in.
Yeah,
you like walk down this hallway.
Yep. You were kind of funneled in like a rat to, you know, there was like all kinds of like seasonal type stuff.
It kind of built up the excitement
yes.
too.
And I remember like, since it was seasonal, like when it was summertime, they'd have all this like, you know, pool type stuff. It was wintertime, they'd have that row of sleds, you know, right up front. And yeah, you build up the excitement, and then when you emerge, and it's just aisle and aisle. I mean, it's very open nowadays.
Yeah.
And they still have kind of aisles, but they're really small.
But it's like now the aisles are like on the outsides, and like the middle. I mean, there are aisles in the middle too, but it's more open in the middle.
It's very open, and that's just sort of like the style of nowadays. But it used to be like long aisle after long aisle. And where I'm going with this specifically is the way video games used to be laid out.
Yeah, they used to have like it was like a little card that you would flip up, and you can take like the piece of paper out to buy your game.
Now, did you ever take one of those pieces of paper without any intention of buying the game?
Well, not so much no intention.
Yeah.
But I want this. I don't have the money now. Let's hide this, you know, so I can come back.
No intentions, baby. Okay, getting the ticket, trying to scheme your way. Like, you don't have any way to buy it yourself, but you want that ticket.
I'm gonna come back, and I don't want it to sell out.
which is possible because they didn't keep the games with the tickets. They had this mystical, magical land of
The cage.
Yeah, the cage. So you took your ticket, you walked up to
Go to the cashier.
Yeah, you buy the game.
You pay for it.
The ticket makes its way to the cage, which is like off to it's in the front of the store, but it's off to the side.
You know, they gotta notify the guy in the cage.
Yeah, they pick up the phone.
Coming.
We gotta pick up, and you know, so you do like your little march. You know, you got your little paper.
Yeah, so you walk up to the cage and you hand him the thing, and he roots around and finds your game.
He looks at your he tastes it, he bites it, he checks the
and the whole time you're just like so excited.
I see it over there. So, you know, and it reminds me too, like we used to work at Babbage's. It's that back area. You know, it's not. It was a very confined space, and it was like a chain link fence. Like it was very weird. But God, that whole experience of buying games. And I don't think it was exclusive to games. I think just any high-end priced item. Because the way they were laid out was there was that game section. There was like a long wall of board games.
They had like you get those same slips like if you wanted to buy a bike.
Bikes.
Bikes weren't stuffed in that same cage. They were in the back.
But do you remember that aisle that had like stuff that you probably never realistically would get, but they were in like glass cages? And they'd be like your little robots.
Oh, yeah, like the little Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah.
Like on display there.
They were behind a little cage waiting to get out.
Yeah.
You couldn't actually hold it or pick it up. But all kinds of cool things like they would have behind those, you know, cages. I remember like camcorders they would have back there. Just high-end stuff that you just wouldn't normally go to a toy store and pick up on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
But I remember going down certain aisles, and do you remember the like little like sets of like slot cars? The slot car tracks.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I can't really picture them at Toys R Us though.
Well, at Toys R Us, they would assemble them and they would hang from like the top.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? And they would do it with train sets. But yeah, they would actually hang the assembled whole set.
Yeah.
So you could just go and look at those for like
I remember that
forever. And that's where they kept like the RC cars and things like. In my mind, I can totally remember it. And then there was like. Then there was like an aisle of like stuff that used to be, you know, like they don't really have a lot of it anymore. Then there was like your Transformers and G.I. Joes and that stuff. There was those 2 or 3 aisles that we lived in.
Yeah, He-Man and everything.
He-Man, and then there was like girl stuff and baby stuff. But it's that old layout, and it's I could go into a Toys R Us and feel like being there for hours, and just I could look at it. I might be looking at the same stuff all the time, but when it was like a thing to go to Toys R Us. And now, you know, you could go to Toys R Us nowadays and maybe spend hours looking at stuff, but like everything just feels like open and in front of you.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess like when it was more condensed like it used to be.
It doesn't feel like they have as much.
Yeah, I don't think maybe that's too why they open it up. They just don't have as much stock as they used to. I
don't know.
But yeah, Toys R Us, the old layout of the Toys R Us. That's my number 3, man. I have just the fondest memories of the 80s. Oh, and I can't mention like Toys R Us in the 80s without bringing up those like fabled all you can like put in your cart shopping.
Oh yeah.
You ever see those like on TV shows?
Like you would like win like on some game show or something and win like the opportunity to run around for like
2 minutes or something.
2 minutes, and whatever you could get in your cart, you got to keep.
Oh yeah, and they'd have a promo over, and like kids like running through the aisles like supermarket sweep and just shoving.
Yeah.
And I would imagine in my head, how would I play this? Exactly how would I do that? Because you know, you don't want to just get 20 of the same toy.
And they would like interview the kids and ask like what their plan is.
Like he won the Super Bowl or something. What was your strategy?
I go straight to the Transformers aisle.
Oh man, but that just it added to the lore of Toys R Us. Because even though even as a kid knew I'd probably never get that, it was like winning the lottery, but as a kid.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, how I would imagine would I spend my 2 minutes. And maybe it was 5 minutes. It probably wasn't just 2 minutes.
You know, if they would do something like that now, it would just like load up their cart just like any kid would do and then sell everything on eBay.
Yeah. Probably. Or like, you know, everything's so condensed nowadays. Like you could get away with everything in like 5 minutes nowadays. At least you had to sprint through some hallways back in the old days. But yeah, that's my number 3, the old school Toys R Us layout. Nick, what's your number 4?
Number 4, 80s. Remember at McDonald's, they would have like all the different characters, the McDonaldland characters. They don't
Mayor
do that
McCheese,
anymore.
Ronald McDonald, Birdie. Yeah, I remember.
Grimace.
What happened to those guys?
Hamburglar. I don't know.
They just disappeared, dude.
All they have now is that little walking red box. The little Happy Meal box.
Yeah. It's just like with legs.
He's got a little smile and legs, and
it's like they assassinated like all of the personality.
They don't even do Ronald anymore. I don't think.
I don't think so. I think you're right. Yeah, gosh, that's a good pull. The McDonaldland characters.
There was like that policeman Big Mac, Officer Big Mac.
Officer Big Mac, where his head was a Big Mac. Yeah.
And there was
Grimace, one of my all-time favorite
Hamburglar,
characters of anything.
The
Grimace.
Fry Guys.
Yep.
The
Hamburglar, who was always scheming. Yeah. And yeah, they would be in the commercials, and they were like stars of like little shows in the commercials.
Birdie.
Yep.
There was a professor at one point.
And then they would have promos like Mac. Like the Mac Tonight guy. It was like Big the Mac head. Tonight. It was like a crescent moon playing a piano.
Yeah, he was like the adult one.
And what was Cosmic?
Cosmic?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a failed one.
Yeah. But gosh, yeah, I remember they were so prominently like displayed in McDonald's. Like they were on the placemats.
There was like the pirate, I forget his name, but there was like a fish fillet pirate guy.
Cook, Captain Cook. Or no, maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But did you guys have the plates and the glasses? Seems like every family I knew in the 80s had like a set of those McDonaldland plates.
Oh no,
and they weren't like ceramic or glass. No. They were just like plastic, I think. But like the glass cups were big. Then if you were lucky, now they still have play areas in McDonald's, but then they had like a themed playland. Where you had like the tunnels that were like hamburgers.
Yeah.
And like they had of course the slide, and then I think those Fry Guys, maybe like those things you would kind of like rock on.
Yeah, they were the Fry Guys, but I was also thinking because they had those with like the little hamburger guys too, the hamburger with eyeballs. There were Fry Guy ones.
They had the Aqua Force meal or whatever, where that kind of came from.
It was like just like the Happy Meal.
There were little puppet hamburgers.
It was like
and
a hamburger, a drink, and a fry. Which was, it's like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Happy Meal.
It's kind of funny because you're like, I saw Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and you're like, wow, this sounds familiar. This looks familiar. And then it kind of was. It was probably from
Master Shake.
Yeah, I loved Aqua Teen Hunger Force. But man, they just kind of disappeared. I wonder when I guess right around the late 80s, early 90s when they kind of popped off the face of the planet.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like they've been doing this red box only like the past couple of years. And for a while it was like just Ronald. They didn't really use any
McDonald's
of the other
used to be such a
much.
Cool place to take a kid. I mean, it was so kid themed and centric.
And they would have like off to the side, like, because pretty much every McDonald's, where you like order your food and then you can like turn a corner and it's kind of like a longer area where you could sit, and that would be like the area like for birthday parties, and they would usually have like on the wall like all those characters, like some kind of mural or something.
Yeah, well, in artwork they would have like framed artwork and stuff. Like every McDonald's had like their own versions of that.
They've taken all that down. It's more, I don't know. I don't want to say like more for adults. Maybe it is. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they have like the cartoon stuff anymore.
McDonald's, I feel like they got attacked kind of unfairly, in around the 2000s when there was like this big surge of, I guess, studies of children, and a lot of children were obese, and that's a serious problem. But not Nintendo, but McDonald's was sort of singled out, it feels like, more than any else because they were probably just the biggest.
Yeah, that Super Size Me.
Yeah, well, that movie.
Yeah.
For sure. But, I mean, they always had some stuff on the side that you could order. Like, you didn't have to supersize.
Yeah.
It's just self-control. Like, it's almost like, well, okay, you can't obviously have any self-control, so we're just going to take it all away.
So, take away the cartoon characters, and that way the
kids won't be, I guess, tempted to go get a Happy Meal.
Yes.
I don't know. maybe it's for the best, but man, I do miss those McDonaldland's characters very much. And the little commercials were great. They were just like little mini episodes.
I guess there's still maybe remnants of them in the play. Well, actually, the playgrounds are all indoor playgrounds now. And it's just like a generic kind of, you just climb on things, but not with the characters.
There's no danger anymore either. Like, I remember, like, those, like, outdoor playgrounds were a little bit dangerous.
You, like, had the thing that you spin round and round and round and get yourself dizzy.
I remember my mom getting so mad at me for getting in those, like, cheeseburger labyrinths. Because they had those, like, you know, like, wood chip, you know, bottoms, like so I would always get like the holes in my, or the knees would just be crud covered because I was down in there playing with those things. And, you know, they always had that kid jumping on the top of the hamburger and you're inside, it's like, whoa, whoa, you know, like, making those horrible echo sounds. But it was so fun, man. It was just, I keep wanting to say like Nintendo and McDonald's, like they're synonymous or something. But yeah, McDonald's was just like a great place for kids, and 80's was like the heyday of McDonald's, really, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a good pick.
Well, the Happy Meal started in the 80's, the very early 80's, which surprised me when I found out about that. Like, there was some show or something, documentary thing I saw that mentioned when Happy Meals came out, and I was like, wow, really?
And to be fair, Happy Meals are still as big a thing as ever. I mean, they still get like whatever's big at the time and make a Happy Meal out of it. And, you know, so thank goodness they at least still have that. And instead of cookies, which also were the McDonaldland's characters.
Yeah. You get apples.
You get apples or oranges or whatever. And that's totally cool. Oh, those are delicious.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that. That's totally cool. But I still miss it.
Yeah.
I would not be upset at all if they had a return of those characters. Bring it back. Like, we're just screwing around. This cafe stuff that we tried out, it looks nice and all. We want to bring back McDonaldland characters. Bring me the cookies. I want the cookies. Okay, so that's your number 4.
That's yours.
My number 4 features another kind of clown. But the Bozo Show.
Yeah, Bozo, yeah.
Bozo the Clown.
I used to watch Bozo.
You know, we talked about USA, which was like a big cable network. WGN was like the other really big cable channel that I remember watching a lot as a kid. And they would have their cartoons, but then they would have the Bozo Show, which was a uniquely Chicago thing.
Yeah.
It was always in Chicago. So, you know, like Chicago is like known for like Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, and Bozo. But I really enjoyed that show. It was, of course, a circus. The characters were very lovable and memorable.
Cookie. And,
Cookie was his like kind of second banana.
Wizzo
the Wizard, who had his little medallion. I loved it. And they had a live studio audience.
Yeah.
And they would pick kids, you know, out of the audience, and they would have their little skits and things. But then they would have the part of the show that I always looked forward to the most. And it came on in the mornings. So it usually came on right as around the time that I had to leave for school. But the grand prize game.
Where you throw the ping pong into the bucket?
Yep, there was a line of buckets. And sometimes too, like if you go to like a one of these types of big complexes that are entertainment, like Main Event or whatever. Like I feel like I've seen like a replica of the grand prize game. They don't call it that, but it's like the buckets. Mm-hmm. It's basically beer pong for kids. And you got a little ping pong ball, and there was like 6 or so buckets. And each time you got a ping pong ball, the first one you just kind of reached down and plopped in.
Right.
And, you know, like they would have Cookie was like the like model. He would come out with like some cookies or something like not too terribly exciting.
Yeah.
Then you know, as the baskets got further away, you'd get more exciting prizes. Yeah. You know, on occasion they'd have like a transformer or some like cool toy. But the big prize was that brand new crisp $100 bill that like at the beginning of every show or contest.
And you know, you mentioned I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay.
The crisp $100 bill, but the you know, when they would do the transformer, you know, they would like announce it, you know, and this announcer guy is like talking about it.
Right.
They never knew what they're talking about.
No,
it's always funny to like listen to them like describe. It's
changing robot man who turns into a helicopter. Yeah. Like, yeah. Well, they're adults, and this is for kids, so I can't blame them.
Okay, the nice crisp $100 bill.
But yeah, they would have the crisp, and it was. I mean, it was like it wasn't folded or anything. They'd pull it out, and he would just drop it in the bucket. And it was rare to see a kid actually make it into that bucket because it was kind of far away. But the grand prize game was phenomenal. The characters again, doody doody doo, like all of those things that I remember at the Bozo show. And then they would end the show like the same. Like the show was very structured. It was like SNL. Like they'd have an opening monologue and some skits and like a game show or a musical guest. But in this case, it was a game show. And then they would end with that parade thing.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if they call it the Grand March or they always marched out of there.
Yeah, a kid got to lead the Grand March, and as the credits are rolling, like they'd be marching out. Like I guess it was like a way to get the studio audience out. But yeah, they would you never see the whole march, but you'd see the start of the march every time.
Yeah.
But I was like looking up Wiki, and the Bozo show ran for a long, long time.
Yeah.
From the 60s all the way up to the 2000s.
Yeah, and there's a few Bozos.
Yeah, there's been a few Bozos. I mean, it ran for so long, like it was in black and white, on TV. And the Bozo, I don't know his name, but Joey or I don't know something, but he was the Bozo the Clown from like 84 or 83 to whatever, all the way up until when it ended. So he's probably the one we all are familiar with. But like most of those characters were on that show the whole run for the most part.
I think I saw like Cookie and Wizzo. Those two actors, they were both like from 68 to 2002 or something.
Which is incredible because they look the same.
Yeah, because I saw a picture of like
too.
Wizzo that was like in black and white in 68, and he looked exactly the same as when I remember him in the 80s.
Yeah, and I guess it's with like they're clowns, so they're wearing makeup. So I guess we shouldn't be too surprised they looked exactly the same. But because like a clown is timeless.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Freddy Krueger. Like Freddy Krueger forever looks like an old burned guy, but like the actor Robert Englund, and he hasn't changed much over the years either. But he could be 80 and like put on that makeup and look like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
But I have really good memories, fond memories of the Bozo show. It was. I don't want to say like you don't see like that thing anymore, but it was even for its time so unique. And I often thought like how neat would it be to have our own like local type thing like that. But yeah, the closest thing we ever got was the kids club.
Oh yeah.
Who I remember there was like Gil, and like Gil had his friendship bracelets from wrist to elbow.
Yeah. Oh, and I forget his name, but I actually had a class with him.
Ooh, celebrity.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was like, oh wow, celebrity guy, and I can't remember his name.
Yeah, if you're still out there, man, I think we were just jealous. I remember like me and my friends ragging on the guy all the time with his friendship bracelets.
Yeah.
It was like armor, man. He was just going to be covered head to toe in friendship bracelets at one point. But hey, everybody had friendship bracelets at the time. There was like a girl with one of those like side ponytail things too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 4, Bozo show. Awesome stuff. What's your number 5, Nick?
All right, number 5 is this is about as 80s as a Garfield poster saying that he hates Mondays.
Wow.
The California Raisins.
Oh my God, California Raisins. Man, you could not escape the Raisins in like, I guess 87, 88.
Yeah.
Hardee's had like the
Raisin
big
craze.
Yeah, Raisin craze, but that the songs, like that Heard It Through the Grapevine song was like an old song, but was playing on modern contemporary radio stations.
And, I think I don't know like the rest of the world because everybody's crazy over the Raisins, but for me, I think the reason I love the Raisins so much was just that stop motion animation.
It was like a continuation of that old Rankin Bass from like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
But better. And I loved it. It started with those raisins because they were a product for raisins.
What was his name? Will Vinton, I think, something like that. Studios that did that stop motion animation. Then it did like a lot of other things too. And but yeah, I loved all that stop motion stuff.
I remember I mentioned Hardee's, but those I had tons and tons of those little figurines. There was the one with the saxophone, and they all had their little tennis shoes on. And
yeah, got the guy singing with the mic. And
the one guy's doing this with the pointed fingers.
The guy with the sunglasses.
Oh, that was my favorite guy with the sunglasses. But I remember it was the commercial, and then there was a special, I think a Christmas special.
Yeah, and I
remember watching that at your house one time.
Yeah, there's the Christmas special, and there's and the Christmas one, really, it only had the raisins in one segment. It was just a lot of different things. It was the two dinosaurs were hosting it.
Did you have that on cassette or something?
Yeah, I've got the VHS.
Okay.
In fact, let me go to Mom and Dad's and look.
Oh boy,
I bet
it's an archaeological dig every time we have a show. Oh, let me get my dig.
Let me make a note of that, because there should be two, I think, VHS. I think I've got the Christmas special, but there's also a Meet the Raisins tape that I had.
And it was probably a primetime special or something.
I take it back though. Probably that Meet the Raisins is the only one, because probably the Christmas special, probably we just recorded when it was on TV.
Yeah.
Probably not a bought VHS tape.
Right. Well, that's how I had most of my stuff too.
But I know I've got at least the Meet the Raisins tape.
Oh, that's awesome. Dude, do you know how many of those shitty Hardee's raisin biscuits that I had to eat to get those things? Why are they so gross? But yeah, that's a great pick. I love that animation style, stop motion animation, which is kind of still around.
Well, when I was looking stuff up, I realized I had no idea that the studio, I think Leica, I think is their name, is actually the successor of the Will Vinton Studios. That they did a Cubo, or is that what it's called?
Cubo and the Two Strings?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Paranorman, those kinds of movies.
Yeah, and Box Trolls. All those. It's actually the successor of the studio that did the Raisins.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. That's cool, man. That makes me feel good, because that's a very old style of animation that doesn't. It's all Pixar and computer animated
and so now. Just like what I was saying, that that stop motion drew me to the Raisins. I mean, that's what draws me to those movies. It's just that style.
Mm-hmm.
I love that style.
Oh, it's a great style. You appreciate the craft.
Oh, and just it's such tedious. Such hard work. So much love goes into that.
I remember watching a making of video for the Nightmare Before Christmas movie, which was in that style.
Yeah.
And they the animators had just these huge boxes of every facial expression any kind of way you could emote in your face.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh my god, it was so amazing. And they were even in these old boxes, the old man from Toy Story 2 he repairs Woody, and he's got those old boxes that open up.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's love, dude. It's
because especially nowadays, you can just so easily just computer generate it all.
Why wouldn't you? It's cheaper, it's faster.
Yeah, but to do all that stop motion animation, it's a love of the craft.
I always have to research when I see a movie like that. I was is that actually stop motion, or are they just computer graphically animating it?
Yeah.
And I get so happy and tickled when I find out.
Cubo, I've seen some little segments of Cubo, and
that's a great movie.
And there was that skeleton thing that was huge, because I've seen where the guy's walking right next to it. That thing's huge.
Oh wow. I'll have to check that out. I'm sure if you buy the Blu-ray or the DVD, there's probably some making of featurettes. Yeah, man, California Raisins and stop motion animation. That's a great pick. And you're right. That's the Garfield on a poster saying, I hate Mondays. Strong 80s presence, California Raisins. All right. So yeah, my last pick, my number 5 is, special one in my heart, and it kills me because technically they're still around. They've evolved, I guess. But MTV, I miss 80s MTV.
Yeah.
And early 90s MTV too, I guess. But there was a time, kiddos, when you would turn on MTV and they would actually play music television. Yeah. Such a iconic thing to do in the 80s was to just turn on this pop culture machine that was music television, MTV. I want my MTV, like so many different versions of this art that you'd see. Mm-hmm. I first learned about like Kevin Smith on MTV, like Jay and Silent Bob. They would have promos. Like it was what was hip and cool, and you really got to know like the music artists from the videos. And it seems so funny to me that there was once a time when people really thought that the music video would kill artists and in music in general. But to me, it put the face to the artist. So. And by telling a story, you kind of match the story to the song. Mm-hmm. It just enhanced the song and the music so much to get a music video. I remember just like spending whole weekends, like once a year or so, they would have countdowns of the greatest, like kind of like what we like to do. They would have like the greatest video countdown, 100 all-time greatest videos, and it was like peppered with like Michael Jackson and Madonna. And, all those acts from the 80s that were so big. And George Michael, like whatever. But yeah, that sometime around the mid-90s, MTV started doing like TV shows. And really even before that, like you get an occasional TV show like Remote Control. Did you ever see that? It was actually where Adam Sandler got his start. It was like it was like a quiz show, but there were like these 3 contestants in like a Lazy Boy. And the host would come out and there'd be like monitor screens like Jeopardy, but in like MTV Wade, they're like off centered and like all kinds of crap. Yeah. But if they guessed wrong, or not if they guessed wrong, but if they had the fewest amount of points, then like their chair would flip up into the wall, and that's how you got eliminated. And like I said, Adam Sandler was in it. He would come out and do like a skit.
I think it seems vaguely familiar, but I don't know.
That was an example I was okay with it. I never hated the shows, but it's when they started like prioritizing the shows over the music and the videos. It seemed like such a hypocritical, weird thing to do. Yeah. And to this day, they still have the MTV Music Awards. And I'm like, why? And I know artists still do music videos. I know they're out there to be seen. And they're still actually not that bad. They still actually have put some money into it. But they're like, the artist, I think, controls how they distribute the video. Like, you'll see them on Vimeo or YouTube, and it's really up to the artist to get it out there. There's not this apparatus anymore that's the music station, the channel, where they play it around the clock. Yeah. And I just miss the MTV from those days so much. That was my background music. That was my radio. Like you'd think of like a dad out in the garage with the radio playing. It's just like a staple of my everyday life. It was always on. A lot of news stories that broke, I would be watching MTV. I'd learn it there. Like when the wall came down, and like that was a big thing I remember they covered on MTV. Rock the Vote, they would have so there was like some cool shows, but it wasn't in around the mid 90s, I guess, is when MTV started to die out with shows like Road Rules and The Real World. Yeah, The Real World was cool at first, but it all just became crap, melodrama crap. So my hat's off to you, 80s MTV. I miss you. I want my MTV. I want it back. It's still out there. Maybe there's someday it'll come back. And I think even there's like multiple MTVs that you can get. And there might be like a classic version of MTV that plays older songs. So like it's probably not, it'll never be like it used to be. Yeah. Where you learn what an artist was from MTV. So anyways, that's my spiel. I'm off. That's my number 5 and maybe my number 1 most missed thing about the 80s is the way MTV used to be. Yeah. Wow, man, that was a great trip down memory lane. All of those things.
Well, and there's so many other things too that we just just any list we have. It's hard to come up, with just narrowing it down to 10 things.
It's a whole decade's worth of stuff.
There's like all those great game shows, like Hollywood Squares. And,
oh hell yeah, dude! Remember like Alf would be like Alf. So Alf was another thing. Was from the 80s.
You kind of mentioned in talking about something else. You mentioned Press Your Luck. But yeah, there's so many game shows. I mean, Mark would be all over the game shows.
Oh yeah,
But
we ought to get him on for just a whole game show episode of some kind, because we've done board games, video games, but we've neglected game shows.
You know, he said at one time that if he would be willing to do like a Skype in. You should Skype him in and talk game shows.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Special guest, Mark. We've mentioned him I don't know how many times, so it's only fitting that he be our first like special guest. Trapper Keepers.
Trapper Keepers, yeah. Oh, yeah, and like I would always, and I guess this is still a thing, I don't know, but like the little dinosaur erasers. I would go to the bookstore when I was in elementary school and buy so many of those little erasers.
All you gotta say is the bookstore, I think, and just memories of buying like the different kinds of erasers. The pencils with the little grooves for your fingertips. Remember those?
Yeah.
I forget what they were called, but that was big.
I never really went to the bookstore like in middle school or high school, but elementary school, that was.
No, yeah, me neither. It was all elementary school for sure. So like just. Those kinds of things remind us of the 80s. I don't know. Like we want to condense this a little bit, but those are like 10 solid things from the 80s that we miss. As always, if there's anything that you would like to throw down in the comments that we missed that you remember and loved and missed from the 80s, feel free to do so. You mentioned that you might have that California Raisins tape.
Yeah, I didn't make a note of that.
Yeah, if you find that, take pictures. You can throw it up on our Facebook page, which is the BitGeeks. You can find us there on Facebook. We try to put visual cues that aren't so great for audio listeners.
Right.
Try to put those up there, and just for fun and preservation, just for us too. Check us out there. We have a Instagram. Also, the BitGeeks, that gets neglected a bit so far. Thanks to everybody for subscribing. If you don't mind, like the video down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share with your friends. And, until next time, I guess maybe until we do a 90s episode, we'll go ahead and teleport back into present day, where things are pretty awesome, too. I've been Ron Avis.
I'm Nick Wright.
And we'll see you next time.
See you.
Bye.